I've been painting miniatures with midnight blue shadows or dark plum shadows for quite a while now. I like to use excessive shadowing on one complete side of a miniature as a reflection of my own personal artistic style. I've always considered shadows to be a neutral aspect of the overall miniature color scheme, and I've never given much thought to how this additional hue affects the cohesion of the overall color palette. Today I'll remedy this by considering the midnight blue as one of the 3 primary colors in a triadic color scheme. So let's get started, and welcome to Trehane Miniatures. I'm painting the Spider of Leng miniature from the Cthulhu Death May Die board game. Looking at the game art, it appears that there are only 2 colors for this miniature. The dark purple in the shadow, and what looks like a slightly orange flesh color on a lot of the joints and the body. I know that I want to have dark blue shadows on this miniature along with a moonlight glow effect on the back. This will tie the Spider of Leng in with the rest of the miniatures that I've already painted for this game. I begin by priming the entire miniature with Rust-Oleum Midnight Blue. This is my favorite dark blue color for priming miniatures. However, this paint has a satin finish, so I usually follow up by priming with a little light coat of matte varnish, which will help the acrylic paint better adhere to the model. I would love to use something like Color Forge for priming my minis, but I haven't found a blue that's dark enough for my liking. I will add a moonlight glow coming from above on the left rear of the miniature, and I will paint the front right side of the mini as if it's well lit. To establish the moonlight glow, I lightly spray some Vallejo Azure through an airbrush at the appropriate angle. I spray the paint from the direction where I want the light to be coming so that it hits the miniature just as the light would. This is a very light application of paint. I'm using this only to inform me where I need to place the highlights, which I'll do in the next step. I use titanium white to brighten the highlights on the rear of the spider's abdomen. If painting these highlights on a textured surface, dry brushing is the easiest way to go. If the surface is smooth, such as on a cape or human flesh, I'll draw the highlights in place manually with a standard paintbrush. This guy is mostly textured with a few smooth areas like the legs, so I will use both methods here. To complete the blue moonlight area, I grab a dark blue and glaze it over the white highlights that I just placed. I thin this down significantly with water. Dark blue can be very opaque out of the bottle, and I want to make sure that it looks nice and bright over the white highlights. At this point, I know that I'll have blue and purple in the color scheme, but I haven't decided on the third color yet. I think I'm going to skip the flesh color and instead use ice yellow to highlight the purple body. For the well-lit side of the miniature, I begin with a coat of first-generation Army Painter Alien Purple. I'm choosing this specific paint because of its translucency. I want some of the midnight blue to show through this layer around the edges. I also want to leave the midnight blue visible in the deep recesses, even on the well-lit side of the miniature. Having a single shadow color present over the entire miniature will help unify the color palette and create a cohesive look across the miniature. As I apply this dark purple, I don't take it all the way up to the highlights that I painted on the shadow side of the miniature. I make sure to leave a little band of midnight blue visible between the alien purple and blue highlights. This helps add depth that will make the model appear more three-dimensional. Vallejo purple is the main mid-tone color for the spider's body. I will build up the opacity of this layer more towards the spider's front right side. I like to highlight my miniatures transversely rather than highlight as if the light is coming directly from above. So here, I highlight the right side of the miniature more than the left. This allows the shadows on one side of the miniature to be much more visible, and therefore the shadow color plays a larger role in the overall color scheme. This style of dynamic lighting can help establish the mood for the piece. With these dark blue shadows affecting so much of the miniature, I'm going for a dark and gloomy atmosphere here. I create a mix of ice yellow and purple to begin highlighting the miniature. I've used this combination many times before, so I know darn well that this is going to create a very pink hue for the spider. This is perfect for this color scheme. Now all I have to do is find a color that looks great with pink and blue, and that will be my third color for this triadic color scheme. General guidance suggests that neutral colors such as creams and tans and light grays work best with these two colors. However, I'm looking for something a little more interesting, something a little more monstrous and less like a child's bedroom. The color suggestion that speaks to me the most is sage green. So I'll use green as an accent color for the spider's eyes, claws, and those pustule sword-looking things on the upper abdomen. The final step for the purple body is to highlight with pure ice yellow. This will maximize the contrast in the piece. The yellow is placed mostly around the head and upper abdomen. The yellow is a stark contrast to the dark blue shadow area. The band of midnight blue creates a subconscious barrier of sorts for the viewer's eyes, guiding them towards the glistening yellow features. Without the presence of dark shadows, any highlight loses its impact. If every part of the model is brightened with highlights, then no part of the miniature will appear to be bright. I also need to paint some dark features on the model. This is most easily accomplished with dark shadows and dynamic lighting. I could achieve this look by painting neutral colors here and there that don't receive highlights. But on a simplistic model such as this, there really aren't any accent pieces to paint in that way. One option I considered was to paint the legs a much darker color, like charcoal gray. I feel that dark gray would look fantastic next to the violet body. However, as I got into the painting, I found myself having just too much fun highlighting all of this purple. Besides, even though it's only on one side of the mini, the dark blue primer is already pulling duty as the dark contrast feature. Alright, all that's left is to paint the green bits. I am actually going to paint the eyes, claws, spiky bits, and pustules on the abdomen all a little differently. However, they all begin with an opaque coat of Pro-Acryl black-green. The eyes get tiny dots of titanium white to simulate specular highlights. The eyes will be the brightest green feature on the miniature. I'm going to paint the pustules in a very similar manner to the eyes, but I want them to be a little more gross, so I'm underpainting the bumps within these sores with ice yellow instead of white. Then I use the most worthless paint in the Army Painter line to glaze over the underpainting of the eyes and sores. While Jungle Green may be completely worthless as a paint, as it has no coverage at all, I find it makes a great color filter. I don't thin this down at all. I simply brush it on as is, straight from the bottle. When used over white, it works great for any iridescent greens or glowing features on a model. For anything else, I'd choose a different paint. For clarification, this is first gen Army Painter paint. The Army Painter Fanatic line has much better coverage, and I believe they renamed this color to Rainforest. Other good choices to use in place of Jungle Green would be any fluorescent green acrylic ink or paint. The claws and spikes on the abdomen get a quick highlight of dark yellow green. I add some ice yellow to the dark yellow green to further highlight these features. This will complete the spikes on the abdomen, but I want to go a little brighter with the claws near the spider's head. For the final highlight on the claws or fangs that are near the spider's face, I apply a final highlight of ice yellow. At this point we're almost done, but I feel that the miniature could use a few nuanced coloration changes over the body. I break out Crusted Sore by the Army Painter to glaze around some of the joints, pustules, and cracks and crevices around the miniature. As I'm doing this, I'm careful to paint around the existing highlights. I don't want to create more work for myself by destroying a finished product. The only areas where I paint over the ice yellow are on the pustules on the back. I want these to look more irritated and inflamed. Alright, it was fun discussing why I choose to use shadows like this in my miniature painting. If you have any suggestions for other shadow colors that I should try, I would love to hear your input. I'd like to thank my generous channel members for supporting my work on this channel. You too can become a channel member for as little as $1.99 per month and receive perks such as early access to videos, extended versions of my painting tutorials, and a tier that lets you choose which miniatures I paint next. Thank you so much for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to join our growing community of arachnophobes.